Good morning, students. Today, myself, Ronit, will be starting with your first chapter in English grammar, that is syntax. The other name of this chapter is subject, verb and agreement. That's the other name of this chapter. So students, why this chapter is important for us? Why will we be learning this chapter? So before starting this, first we will begin this chapter with the definition part. So first of all, we must know what does this syntax stands for. Why do we learn this chapter syntax? Why this chapter is important for us? Alright students, so now let us begin with the chapter syntax with the definition part. So please take out your notebook and pen and pencil so that you can note down the essentials. Alright students, so first of all, the definition. See, half the definition of this chapter syntax you will get in the title itself. See, this is the other name of this chapter syntax. And as I said, half the definition you will get in the title part itself. And you will see this. See, it is nothing but an agreement. This whole chapter is nothing but an agreement. The other name of agreement is deal. You can call agreement as deal also. In layman language, in common language, or either you say agreement or you say deal. Both are same things. Alright students. So syntax is nothing but it's an deal or say agreement. And this deal has taken place between two. And who are they two? They are the two. The first one is the subject and the second one is the verb. So see students, syntax is nothing but an agreement, or you can say as a deal between subject and verb. And this deal says that, what does this deal says? I'm writing down. So syntax is nothing but an agreement. It is nothing but an agreement. See, this part we have got from the title itself. That syntax is an agreement. Between whom? Between these two. The first one is subject and the other one is verb. So it is an agreement between subject and verb. So as you all can see that half the definition we have got from the title itself. That syntax is nothing but an agreement between subject and verb. Now next thing is, what is that agreement we are talking about? See, the agreement between subject and verb has taken place. And the agreement says that verb will always change according to the subject. जो verb है आपका वो हमेशा subject के अनुसार बदलेगा. The verb will always change according to the subject. Now, what is that change we are talking about? किस change की हम बात कर रहे हैं? Change ये है बच्चों that if the subject is singular, then the verb will always so be singular. If the subject is plural, then the verb will also be plural. See, it is an agreement between subject and verb where verb changes according to the subject. Alright students, तो जहां पे आपका जो verb है वो subject के अनुसार बदलेगा. So students, mind you one thing, always the verb will change according to the subject. ठीक है? Never ever this subject will change according to verb. Always the verb will change according to the subject. Never ever the subject would be changing according to the verb. Never that would happen. Always the verb will change according to the subject. And what is that change we are talking about? Before that, please note down the definition. Then we will talk about the second thing. You may pause the video and note down this definition so that we can move forward. Pause करने का. Now I will talk about that change I was talking about. See, if singular subject has been used, then the verb will also be singular. As simple as that. Okay? If the subject is singular, then the verb will also be singular. Next, if plural subject is used, if the subject is plural, then your verb will also be plural. So this is a change I was talking about. See, if the subject is singular, then the verb will also be singular. If the subject is plural, then the verb will also be plural. So this was the change I was talking about. This was the actual agreement which happened between subject and the verb. Alright students, so now let us give you a question as an example so that you can test yourself that how better you have understood this agreement. So there's a question for you, every one of you there. The question is, students, the quality of apples is or the quality of apples is or not good. So there's a question for every one of there. Okay? The quality of apples is or not good. So students, as you all can see here, is and are is your helping verb. Okay? And that's the option for you. You have to select the correct option. So now please, you may think about the answer and see and please match whether your answer is correct or not, honestly. Alright, see. So as I have said you, that your verb will always depend on the subject. And we all know that the subject always comes in the beginning of any sentence. And the subject here is the quality. The subject here is the quality. And the quality is nothing but an uncountable. And uncountable always takes singular verb. So the subject here is the quality which is uncountable. So our verb will also be what? Singular. So the correct answer is. Alright students, many of you get in problems. Many of you choose the noun. Okay? Many of you. Okay? You must note down one thing here. Your verb never ever depends on noun or pronoun. Your verb always depends on the correct subject. Alright students, and as we all can see here, the subject is the quality which is uncountable, so our verb is also singular verb. And one more thing students, subject always comes in the beginning of the sentence. That's the rule. Alright students, so this was the basic of this whole chapter, syntax. And on this basics, on this principle, this whole chapter works. And on this principle, we will be seeing the whole chapter. So now, after this principle, we would be learning one by one all the rules, and we will see one by one all the rules on which this whole chapter works on. Pause. Alright students, so now one by one we will see the rules. Rule number 1. That's the very basic rule, and most of you must be knowing this. See, rule number 1. First of all, I'll give the question. First of all, I would be asking the question and you have to answer the question. See, the question of rule number 1. Ram, Shyam and Mohan. Ram, Shyam and Mohan. Okay? And you have the options. Is ya are friends. See, this is a very easy question. You must answer the question. Ram, Shyam and Mohan is ya are friends. See students, rule number 1 says, see, answers you must be knowing that the correct answer is nothing but are. But what's the rule behind this? What's the rule behind this? Now answer the second question of rule number 1. Bread, butter and jam is or are my breakfast. Bread, butter and jam is or are my breakfast. So now student, please tell me what would the answer for second question of rule number 1? The correct answer would be is. So now rule number 1 comes here. Rule number 1 says that if the subjects, here we have multiple subjects. First one is Ram, second one is Shyam, third one is Mohan. if multiple subjects are joined by and, is joined by a conjunction and, ठीक है, if multiple subjects, more than one subjects are joined by a conjunction and, then your verb would be always plural. So between is and are, the correct answer is are. Now come to the second question. Once again, we have multiple subjects. First one is bread, second one is butter, third one is jam. Multiple subjects. And once again, we can see here, it is joined by and. But in this question, the correct answer is a singular verb, and that is. Why so? Because students, these subjects are complementary nouns. These subjects are complementary nouns. So before moving on this rule, we must know what is a complementary noun. See, complementary nouns are those nouns which complement each other, which depends on each other, जिनका इस्तेमाल इकट्ठे होता है, जो एक दूसरे पर निर्भर करते हैं. As you all can see here, bread, butter and jam, all these are used together. All these things, all these nouns depend on each other. Alright students, so these are complementary nouns, and whensoever, जब कभी भी complementary nouns are used, then in that case the verb will always be singular, and henceforth I have mentioned, take out the right answer as singular verb is. Alright students, so rule number 1 says two things. First one, if multiple subjects are joined by and, then the verb will be plural. Second thing, the rule says that if multiple subjects are complementary nouns, then the verb will always be singular. Alright students, so these are two different things rule number 1 says. So the questions of rule number 1 is mentioned here. Please note down that. And after this, after erasing this, I am mentioning the rule, and please do mention that also. Pause. So students, now I have mentioned the rule. So please take out a pen and pencil and please note down the rule number 1. See, if multiple nouns are joined by an, एक साथ एक noun अगर joined है and से, तो आपका जो verb होगा, that would be plural. But if complementary nouns are joined by an, अगर complementary noun joined है and से, तो आपका जो verb होगा, that would be singular. So please note down this complete rule. After noting down this rule, I am going to write what is complementary noun. Please pause the video and please note down this rule number 1. After this, in star mark, please mention what is complementary noun, students. Alright students, pause. So students, after noting down this rule, now please mention what is complementary noun. Please use a star mark and then note down what does this complementary noun mean. Alright students, so I have noted here, complementary nouns are nothing but these are those nouns which complement each other and which are dependent on each other, or you can say which are used together. I have mentioned the one example here, pen, pencil, rubber, all these are used together in stationery. Or some more example, in question also we have seen one example, bread, butter, jam. Some more example, bat, ball, wicket. Alright students, so these are some more examples. So please note down in star mark that what does complementary noun mean, so that you can use this in rule number 1. Now after this, moving on to rule number 2 students. So now please pause. So students, moving on to rule number 2, as you all can see here, the question of rule number 2 are mentioned here on the board. The first question says, neither Ram nor his men is or are thief. ना तो राम ना ही उसके लोग चोर हैं. So बच्चों ये बताइए, please tell me, what would be the correct verb? See, we have again two subjects here. As we have all learnt that our verb depends on the subject. But the question here is, but the problem here is, we have multiple subjects. One subject is Ram, which is singular, and the other subject is his men, which is plural. So now we are in a bit dilemma that what should we use? Okay? Either the verb would be singular or it would be plural, since we have singular subject also and plural subject also. So what to use? In these type of questions, students, if the subjects are joined by neither nor, or if it is joined by or it is joined by not only but also, or it is joined by either or, neither nor. If these conjunctions are used to join your subjects, okay, as you all can see here, if neither nor, either or, not only but also, or if these conjunctions are used to join your subjects, then the verb will depend on the second subject. We have first subject here as Ram, second subject here is as his men. So we have here two subjects. First one is Ram, which is singular. Second one is his men, which is plural. And as I have said, if the subjects are joined by neither nor, or either or not only but also. If your subjects are joined by these conjunctions, then your verb will depend on second subject. Then your verb will depend on second subject. Second subject is his men, which is plural. So our correct answer would be what? Plural. So between is and are, what's the plural verb? Absolutely, are is the correct answer. Now come to second question. Same rule. The question, same rule. Rule number 2 ka question number 2. Same rule. It works on the same rule. As we can see here, these subjects, first one is Shyam, second one is Ram. These subjects are joined by conjunction or. And as I have said earlier in this rule number 2, that if your subjects are joined by or, then your verb will depend on second subject. And the second subject is Ram, which is singular. So your verb will also be singular. And between is and are, what's the singular verb? Is. So is the right answer, students. So this is how rule number 2 works. So these are the two questions for the explanation of rule number 2. After noting down these questions, I will write the rule. So first, note down this question, students. Then afterwards, please note down the rule also. Pause. So students, I have written down rule number 2 for you all. The rule says, if multiple subjects, if more than one subjects are joined by either or, neither nor, not only but also, or, then verb depends on second subject. So please note down the rule number 2. After this, we will be moving on to rule number 3. Pause. So now students, we have come to rule number 3. The questions of rule number 3 are mentioned here on the board. First question of rule number 3 says, question says, Mr. Ram along with his boys has or have gone to Delhi. Okay, that's the first question. So once again, we have multiple subjects. First one is Mr. Ram. Second one is his boys. That's the second subject. The first subject is singular, but the second subject is plural. So now students, if multiple subjects are joined by along with, or like, or unlike, or in addition to, or together with, or as well as, etc., etc. Okay. If your subjects are joined by all these conjunctions, along with, together with, like, unlike, as well as, if these conjunctions are used to join your subjects, then your verb will depend on the first subject. That your verb will depend on the first subject. And the first subject here is Mr. Ram, which is singular. So between his, has and have, the singular one is has. So has is the right answer. So now many of the students get confused between rule number 2 and between rule number 3. So you must not confuse here. Both the rules are very different. In rule number 2, we talked about what? In those rules, the conjunctions were totally different. In those rules, we were talking about the conjunctions like either or, neither nor, not only but also, or. These conjunctions were used in rule number 2. But when we talk about rule number 3, we talk about these conjunctions along with, together with, like, unlike, as well as. If these conjunctions are used, then in these cases, the verb will depend on the first subject. Alright, and the first subject here is Mr. Ram, which is singular, so verb. So the correct answer is singular verb has. Now come to the second question, students. Try to solve these questions. Dogs like the cat, has a have, come to whom. Once again, we have multiple subjects here. First one is dogs, which is plural. Second one is the cat, which is singular. And we all know that if the subjects are joined by like, then the verb depends on first subject. First subject here is dogs, which is plural. So verb will also be what? That also would be plural, students. So here between has and have, the correct answer would be have. Alright, students. So these were the two questions of rule number 3. Now I would be, please note down the questions first. Then after this, I would be mentioning the rule also, students. Pause. So students, I have mentioned the rule for you all, the rule number 3 here. Students, please note down the rule number 3 from the whiteboard. Rule number 3 says, if the subjects are joined by like, unlike, together with, along with, in addition to, etc., etc., then the verb would depend on the first subject, students. So this was rule number 3, students. Now, after noting down this rule number 3, we will move on to the next rule. That's rule number 4, students.